Hey there. Over the past few weeks, I have been besieged by terrified Greek nationalists. I still think that the way they see the world is unnecessarily prejudiced towards Turkey, but they have gotten me thinking a little bit harder about what Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan may be up to. This thinking has brought me to a weird place. I've now almost convinced myself that the survival of Syria's Bashar Assad is essential to Israeli security. With one exception Greeks can't stop telling me about, for almost a whole century, Turkey did very little foreign adventuring. Their massive military mostly occupied itself with coups and Kurd suppression, but also had a wise tradition of staying the F out of the Middle East. That changed in 2016 when Turkey invaded Syria. Now, when the invasion happened, I was pretty sure it was going to backfire massively for Turkey and for Erdogan, and pretty quickly. I still think it will backfire eventually. Turkey getting into the occupation game is a terrible fucking idea. The thing is, the costs have come. Turkish soldiers have died in significant numbers, and Turkey hasn't budged. In fact, the country has been steadily expanding its influence, chunk by chunk of Syrian territory since 2016. Erdogan seems to have doubled down, winning political points at home and abroad for his intervention in Libya, and winning 0 points outside of Turkey by kicking up a new clown show in the Eastern Mediterranean over gas. What's important to emphasize here is that Turkey has never had the ability to destabilize the region all by itself, and it still doesn't. All of its interventions have been excused by chaos created by somebody else. Libya was destroyed by the United States in 2011. Turkey certainly played a leading role in destroying its neighbor Syria, but that too was under the direction of the US and with massive funding, coordinated and supplied directly by the United States. Even the Cyprus intervention was a delayed result of Britain's typical botching of that island's independence process. Whether you are biased in Turkey's favor, as I am, and believe they are pursuing partially rational interests, or think they are evil Ottoman imperialists like the Greek nationalists do, the lesson is clear. It's the chaos that allows Turkey to expand. So if we are supposed to be worried about the ambitions of Turkish President Erdogan, then why the hell are the US and Israel working so hard to bring more chaos to Syria? Despite many promises to the contrary, Trump is very much on board with Barack Obama's Get Assad project, and Israel isn't even bothering to conceal the amount of bombing it does in Syria anymore. The more I think about this, the more insane it looks. For years now, I've considered a jihadist hell to be the most likely result of the fall of Assad. Maybe something better was possible for a few months in 2011, but it was obvious by 2012 that the CIA and Saudi Arabia had produced an al-Qaeda haven, and by 2014, the Get Assad project had given the world the horrors of the Islamic State. You had to be in the selling bombs business to think this was a good result, but that is the business most US and Israeli leaders are in, so there you go. But it's not 2011 or 2014 or 2016 anymore. The Gulf countries simply don't have the spare oil money to sponsor terrorism anymore. The Syrian rebel militias have a new patron, Turkey. And unlike the Gulf countries, Turkey has a large, very serious, and now pretty experienced military of its own. It's possible that the fall of Assad won't lead to defense contractor-friendly chaos. It could lead to a Turkish border with Israel. This sounds crazy, but the more I think about it, the more plausible it gets. Turkey could work its way down the coast. The extraordinary mess Lebanon's leaders have made makes that poor country vulnerable to a strongman right now. Whether or not Lebanon is involved, if Assad falls, it's actually easy to imagine the chaos that follows, giving Erdogan a series of rationalizations that bring Turkey all the way down to the Israeli and Jordanian borders. The Turks have been there before, after all. Let me be clear to some of the more enthusiastic elements of my large and diverse Turkish audience. There is nothing cool or fun about this idea. This process of conquest would require Turkey to change dramatically, to become exactly the nasty fascist state that the craziest Greek imagines it is today. This process would also require the destruction of Turkey's still surprisingly strong democracy. This would almost certainly involve large-scale ethnic cleansing and probably genocide. It would be a horror show. Israel has helped wreck Syria out of the fear that Iran has too much influence there. I think the prospect of Turkey on the border, especially a Turkey that has changed for the worse enough to conquer Syria, is much scarier. For over a decade now, Erdogan and Netanyahu have done a politically profitable dance where they condemn each other, but their countries mostly continue business as usual. That's not really possible anymore if they share a border. To clarify, I am not saying that this will absolutely happen if Assad falls, but Turkey's spreading throughout Syria is a spectacularly dangerous possibility that nobody's really paying attention to. The end of the Syrian buffer zone could make a Turkish war with Israel and its allies terrifyingly likely. It would be far cheaper for everyone involved, and possibly save millions upon millions of lives if Assad were allowed to stick around. The effort to overthrow Assad has been disastrous from the start. It produced a massive refugee crisis and resulted in Britain's exit from the European Union. Yet the effort continues. This year's Caesar sanctions are brutalizing the Syrian people in a new way. And it seems like many prospective members of the Joe Biden administration are still interested in overthrowing Assad. But Assad may be the only thing standing in the way of a Turkish-Israeli border. The survival of Assad may be vital to Israeli security. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and click the bell next to the subscribe button to get an update whenever I upload a new video. Thanks.